Hi guys, it's Tom from Lived Health, and I'm here with somebody who's pretty special to me because I've talked to her many times before and I've seen the effect of her work. And this is Vicky, who's a psychologist. And Vicky is professor of psychology, but in the States. And we have spoken an awful lot about psychology and MS, and it's particularly relevant now because quality of life is a theme of ECTRIMS this year. And we are just going to chat a little bit about quality of life and MS and things like fatigue and stuff. So what would you say is the biggest impact on an MS's quality of life?
Gosh, after the session that we just attended, it would seem as though fatigue, which you just mentioned, was the thing on lots of people's mind. And I'll be honest, it is not something that I study. And the reason is because it's such a great mystery. I did some early work with fatigue, and then I left it behind because my real true passion is studying cognition.
Yeah.
Another seriously intractable symptom of MS, cognitive impairment, just tackling the really hard stuff. But it's the stuff that affects people's quality of life in ways that their general practitioner might, or their MS practitioner might not actually be addressing. And so it kind of...
And quality of life goes on when you left the consulting room. If you've got a rubbish quality of life now, you'll have a rubbish, so it's doing something about that. And certainly as a patient, I find sometimes the whole conversation is focused on, and if you've got any side effects and what are your latest symptoms, and nobody's looking at it holistically.
Right.
So,
Well, look, we use the treatments that are at our disposal, and so we focus on those. And we happen to have a great array of DMTs now that are doing a very good job at controlling disease activity. So, of course, that's going to, constitute the crux of what you're talking to your doctor about. But we do know that these other things are impacting people in measurable, deleterious ways, and we don't have treatments per se. We don't have formal treatments. We have workarounds.
you don't have, this is what gets me. There's no pills, fair enough, but I don't think many MSs are that keen to engage with I've got to do some heavy lifting myself. But the fact is, that there's things that can be done that require some input that will actually improve the outcomes long term for people, which is, tell me, you, out of the lab, you ended up starting a company, didn't you, called eSupport. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, well, so this was to address what I do at Columbia in our MS center is I'm a neuropsychologist. I do the cognitive evaluations. But when you try to isolate one function of the brain and look at that, you end up with the whole messiness of all of it.
It's a big thing, isn't it, the
brain?
brain?
It's a big thing. It does so many things. And I think mood was the thing that was really striking me as we need to do better here, right? Like,
you mean I'm unhappy the whole time? Is that what you mean by
I mean
mood?
that patients tell me, I have severe anxiety, I have a lot of depression, and these things these things accompany MS. And saying to a patient, well, let me, recommend that you see a therapist. I actually felt that was bordering on unethical because particularly in the United States, it's an incredible challenge to find a psychotherapist in the best of times, one who takes your insurance, who doesn't have a 6-month-long wait list, and by the way, with whom you have a magical connection, because you kind of want to have that with your psychotherapist. So I would really hesitate to say that to patients. What I did start saying to patients in 2017 was, hey, do you want to meet me in a Zoom room and we'll start a group together? And
so other people with MS. So if you've got MS and I've got MS, I think that's great because we can step over all it's like this.
Yeah.
It's like you're in the club,
Yeah.
it might be different, but you're in the club and you will also cut me the slack. I won't feel like you don't get me.
Right.
So how many people because I know I'm a bit hazy, but you do it across the country, but you have groups, don't you? And I mean, are they 3 people, 10 people?
Yeah, so it was something that started with a clinical trial that I ran in my lab to quantify the benefits. It's like everybody knows support groups are good, but I'm a scientist at heart, and I wanted to quantify. And so we targeted loneliness and depression in our first trial, and we were able to move the needle on both of those. And our next trial was eFit, where we tried to increase physical activity in people with MS by working as a team. Right?
They'll come back and sort of report to one another.
Weekly.
Okay.
Like this is, we would state our goals together, and then we would check in on each other. By stating something outwardly, we're that much more likely to do it.
We're speaking to Lars
Human beings are.
Speaking to Lars Hibbett, who's an exercise specialist, and I said, how do people do this? Because it's easy to just say it. And he said, in a group, this accountability, whether you're on a team or you're getting together on Zoom or whatever, and it's like, did you do your 10,000 steps?
Because what I just said in my talk, we're leveraging our bioevolutionary drive to live as social animals. So it's, it's
So that's a
win-win.
fancy way of saying we like one another, we don't like being lonely.
People
So,
are obsessed
you
with
doctors.
people, and we will do things that we won't do for ourselves. We will do for someone else who's watching us
Yeah,
on
especially when you've
social
been,
media.
yeah, oh, that was one of my theses, was about what is the effect of what you think other people think of your behavior, what effect does it have on it?
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
interesting. Yeah,
and it's measurable again.
Yeah.
So Vicky, on a if you, I know this may be a facile question, but if you could say to people, here's one thing that you could do, that you could take away that might make your life, as Rebecca Scott says, suck a little bit less.
right. Okay.
Can you do it? Will you go for it and do one thing?
I will. But that one thing is different for everybody. But it's the way I approach. Look, I know it's not.
Doctors.
And that's how I got out of that one.
Yeah, exactly.
But I will tell you what, it's exactly what's in my mind when I sit across the desk from my patient. I'm thinking, what is the one thing I'm going to deliver to them at the end of this? And I'm copiously taking notes and listening to everything they're saying and drawing it out of them, because that's what a PhD helps you do. And I'm thinking to myself the whole time, I'm thinking, what's going to be our opportunity? Everybody has an opportunity. Everybody has some place where they're not doing enough or they're falling down.
So let's turn this around from the clinician looking at the patient. Patients, if you were to self-examine, should we say, so I'm not sitting in front of you, you're not taking the notes. I'm not going, she's writing a lot. But it's if I was going to look at myself and think, what's one thing that Dom could do to possibly improve his life?
Just tick through the practical issues, right? Think of yourself like a baby. Am I sleeping? Am I eating? Am I pooping? Am I having sex? Not a baby. But,
Yeah, that was rather worrying.
Like
The part,
But you go through the list of the things that we need as human beings, and you realize where your opportunity is. Okay, this is what I could be doing better. And I'll tell you that for a lot of people, you can stop with sleep, because
or more of.
What's that?
Something I'd be doing more of.
Well, a lot of people have sleep
Like sleep
quality
quality.
issues, and it's a trickle-down effect, right? If that's off, everything else is going to follow.
Lived Health will be bringing you on-the-day highlights from Europe's biggest annual MS conference, ECTRIMS 2022. Make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss out on the latest updates in MS treatment from across the globe.